Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest activity from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and the first orbital launch of the year. I'm Will Robinson Smith. Will be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you all had a wonderful, safe, productive, relaxing, however you want to phrase it, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, all the celebrations, and that 2025 is getting off to a good start for you. Taking a look over at Space Launch Complex 40, the workhorse pad for SpaceX, getting the distinction of hosting, while remains on track, the first orbital launch of the year for SpaceX and the first orbital launch from around the world as well. On board is a satellite on behalf of the United Arab Emirates-based Space 42. SpaceX set to launch this into a geosynchronous transfer orbit once this Falcon 9 leaves the pad. We'll talk much more about the satellite, its mission, and all of its upcoming activities once it's on orbit as we continue throughout the countdown here tonight. First off, though, I want to thank the more than 900 of you who are joining with us live for this first launch of 2025. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button here. Allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast tonight. Our photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, are also out and about, getting ready to do some photography of the rocket, and Adam to track it as well. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can follow them on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. While you're on X, you can all follow Spaceflight Now by simply looking up Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, though, we are on Blue Sky as well as Threads and Facebook. We'll also be joined in tracking assistance tonight by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. As we begin our first countdown of the year, I also want to thank our moderators in the live chat, Ciclistia Lee, Astro Joe, and Mark Otto, all checking in. Good to see you all in the new year. Hope you are all doing very well. You can help them out in the live chat if this is your first launch ever with us, or if you're coming back and want a refresher. We respectfully ask that you refrain from using all caps in your responses. We also would request that you post your comments in English. Acknowledge that this is a non-political outlet here, so we ask you to refrain from overt political dialogue. And of course, perhaps the most importantly, is be respectful of one another. Every launch could be someone's first, and just because something is exceedingly obvious to you doesn't mean that someone isn't learning something that you may already know. So extend the same kindness that you would have liked extended to you the first time you saw a launch live in either a live stream setting or in person, and just go ahead and answer to the best of your knowledge, and that way we can all get a little bit smarter about space together. In that spirit, we're powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube that makes these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like Kitty Chronister, Cumulus Granatus, Skate Letter, The Rocket Girl, Billy Badbutt, Sulfur for Lunch, Jonathan McD, Lauren L., and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our member-only Discord server, as well as, of course, the ability to watch our live liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission tonight or other comings and goings in the realm of spaceflight, you can go ahead and use that YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we roll on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that is greatly appreciated. Also, since this is the first launch of the year, I'll go ahead and ask early on in our broadcast. If you haven't already, a great way to support the channel is just by clicking that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to our channel here at Spaceflight Now. Enter the new year with a little more than 318,000 of you, broadly speaking, in our subscriber community. See if we can end 2025 with at least 500,000. I think that's a reasonable goal, don't you? Going back to the Super Chats for a second, want to thank the Astronomers, one of our channel members, for a $10 Super Chat. Really appreciate that, the Astronomers. Thanks for being with us on our first live stream of the year. And thanks as well to another channel member, Joni Mahoney, the $5 Super Chat, who says, "Go Will on Spaceflight Now. 2025 is going to be a good year." It's going to be busier, I'll tell you that much. It's getting off with a running start here, as just yesterday, Blue Origin's recovery vessel left Port Canaveral. They've seen our video that we posted up on X, formerly Twitter, of the departure of the barge known as Jacqueline, named for Jeff Bezos' mother. That heading out to support the inaugural flight of the New Glenn rocket. Still keeping our eyes over on Launch Complex 36 for the reemergence of the New Glenn rocket. So far, Blue Origin has not officially named a launch date for that mission. Indications suggest as early as Monday the 6th, though time is quickly dwindling for Blue Origin to roll the rocket back into the pad, get it vertical, and be ready for a launch. Also coming up in the near future, you more than likely have noticed that SpaceX published its list of goals for Flight 7 of its Starship rocket from southern Texas. We'll, of course, be down to cover that as well for you. And then smack in the middle of the month, we have a dual moonbound mission with a combination of Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost lunar lander, as well as Japan-based iSpace and its Hakuto R Mission 2, both heading for the moon, both launching on the same Falcon 9 rocket, set to lift off from here at the Cape in mid-January is their current target window, though once again, sort of wash, rinse, repeat. We're in a no official launch date has been announced situation, so we'll have to wait and see when all of these folks put specific dates on the calendar, but you can bet we'll have good, robust coverage of all those missions and everything else coming down the pike in 2025 for you right here on our YouTube channel and on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Coming back to the mission at hand, though, tonight, the launch of the Thuraya 4 NGS mission. As we're talking about the milestones of fueling and going through the countdown, you can hop over to our website at any time at your convenience, spaceflightnow.com. Have a full write-up on this mission. You can learn more about the satellite, where it's going, what it's doing, and the company behind it, Space 42. For now, let's talk about the timeline of the countdown. Milestones that we're anticipating in a nominal countdown scenario for this Falcon 9 rocket. As we're currently T-minus 49 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. Nominally speaking, the readiness poll for the start of fueling will be taken at T-minus 38 minutes. SpaceX conducts this poll electronically, so if they feel like they're in a good position to do so, they can take this poll a little bit early, but 38 minutes from T0 is the nominal point when it is conducted. Assuming that go-ahead is given at the T-minus 35-minute mark is when prop load gets underway. Starts with a loading of RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage, and the frost line and subsequent vapor that forms as a result of that LOX load on the first stage is a good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway, as in the last few Falcon 9 launches, SpaceX has not come out and given word that fueling has begun, so we've had to rely on these visual indications, which fortunately we've got our good cameras pointed at the rocket, so I'll be sure to let you know when we can make the call on the start of fueling. T-minus 30 minutes is when they begin loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels of the Falcon 9's first stage. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will be true on the second stage about 4 minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes, second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. And at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill-down process gets underway. This is when SpaceX is conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen loading. We see it manifest visually by the so-called big vent that begins right about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. That venting will continue on until about 16.5 minutes, where it will taper off, setting up second stage LOXO to begin 30 seconds after that. T-minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill-down sequence gets underway for the Falcon 9. It's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. Helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, we'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes before launch, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we get the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold-down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. That's coming up here, targeting a liftoff at 8:27 p.m. Eastern. That is 01:27 UTC, or in T-minus 45 minutes and 18 seconds. Currently T-minus 44 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. Of course, 2024 was a banner year for SpaceX, wrapping things up with 134 launches for its Falcon family of rockets. 2 of those were Falcon Heavy missions, the rest all Falcon 9s. Of course, SpaceX looking to continue that trend and surpass that with this now new year. Of course, one of the items that hindered this number from being any higher than it already was when SpaceX rounded out 2024 was the mishap that happened on the upper stage back over the summer, which caused SpaceX to stand down from launching for a little bit. So, of course, the company looking to have a year without any mishaps that caused them to ground the Falcon fleet. On board today, though, is this particular satellite, kicking SpaceX off with its first orbital launch of the year. Taking a look at the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite. NGS stands for Next Generation System. The company that launched or is about to send this satellite up is called Space42. It was just a few months ago that it formally formed as a new company. Combination between one of the biggest satellite providers in the UAE, that being Alya Satellite Communications Company, known in short as Yahsat, and an AI-powered geospatial solutions company, Bayanat. The mission getting underway, though, before the merger happened to take place. Yahsat launched 3 of their previous Thuraya satellites starting back in 2001, excuse me. Thuraya satellites 1 and 2 are still on orbit, providing connectivity in the regions of Africa, Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East. However, Thuraya 3, which launched back in 2008, did have a, quote, unexpected payload anomaly that, according to financial filings from Yahsat, caused an ongoing service outage, which was not able to be rectified. So Thuraya 4, an upgraded version of the previous satellites that came before, adding some additional capabilities once it is arrived in GEO. This, of course, is a rendering of what the satellite looks like deployed in its on-orbit configuration. Here's what it looks like right now, essentially, while it's inside the Falcon 9 rocket. This was an image taken by Airbus, the satellite's manufacturer, back before it arrived in the United States. This was when they were in the process of encapsulating it into the transport vehicle before it boarded an Airbus Beluga plane and made its way over here to Florida. Speaking of encapsulation, we do have some photos of the encapsulation that were shared by an official with Space42, the acting associate vice president, Ahmed Al-Manhali. A couple images here, a couple more images here of the satellite as it was encapsulated into the Falcon 9 payload fairings. One of the nice things about these encapsulation photos is you do get a rare glimpse into the tail numbers on these fairings. Of course, part of SpaceX's business model is reusing both the fairing halves as well as the Falcon 9 first stage boosters. You can see, looking at the bottom of the photo on the right-hand side of these two pictures, fairing half on the right, it's got the number 200, the fairing half on the left, number 181. That said, SpaceX doesn't often say ahead of its broadcasts how many times each of the fairing halves have flown, so we'll have to wait just a little bit to learn what the flight number is for these fairing halves, I should say. There's a zoomed-in look at those halves atop the Falcon 9 rocket there. Of course, the second stage in the Falcon 9 always brand new, but the Falcon 9 first stage, this particular booster has the tail number B1073, and it's going for its 20th flight tonight. Talk a little bit more about its flight history as we continue on through the count. Currently T-minus 38 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 36 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. I want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Chuck Briggs for gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate that, Chuck. Who, of course, is manning one of the live cameras out here tonight. Go ahead, pop his view up here. Appreciate Chuck and Jen for helping us out tonight and for expanding our channel member community here. Also want to welcome Cobra Emergency joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Also, for those 20 channel members who received membership, if you haven't thanked Chuck in the live chat yet, please be sure to do so. Also want to thank channel member Josh King for a $5 super chat. Appreciate that, Josh. He says, Happy New Year, Will. Any planned Falcon Heavy missions for the year? There are. I don't have the list in front of me right this second, but I believe one of them will be the launch of Astrobotic's Griffin lander, sans the Viper rover, of course. That decision coming down from NASA to not fly Viper on the Griffin lander. And so Astrobotic has decided to add some other customers in its stead. And if memory serves, there are at least a couple of other Falcon Heavy missions this year. Just not leaping to the front of my mind right this second. See if we can look that up as we go on through the count tonight. Now T-minus 33 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. Do have a word from SpaceX that, quote, all systems are looking good and weather favorable for liftoff. While not quite noting that prop load has gotten underway, we do believe we're starting to see some signs of vapor near the base, the Falcon 9 rocket there. If you look near the bottom of the rocket, just above the ground there, the pad deck, you see a couple gradients of gray, pretty dark to sort of charcoal. Just above that charcoal line is, or we're starting to see a little bit of signs of vapor there. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron did forecast a pretty favorable outlook for this mission at the start of the window. 95% chance of favorable weather at the start of things, with liftoff winds being the only concern tonight. Launch weather officers were tracking between 18 and 26 mile per hour winds, also keeping an eye on the booster recovery weather, which was tracking in the low to moderate range. Currently T-minus 29 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. I want to thank the more than 5,000 of you who are joining with us live this evening for this first orbital launch of the year. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also, we'll note that we are at the point at which SpaceX has begun loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will happen on the second stage in just a few minutes. I want to bring in a video here from Airbus, the satellite's manufacturer, give you an idea of what the satellite looks like in its actual sense, not a rendering. We'll come to that in a minute, but this is a series of clips of the satellite in their clean room before it was encapsulated in its transport case. Also note there's some information in English to read about the satellite. Won't be trying to read all of the wording here for you in real time, but as you can see, there's the Beluga plane that I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, on which the satellite was transported from Europe over here into Florida. Of course, it is now encapsulated atop the Falcon 9 rocket there in the live picture on the right-hand side of your screen at pad 40. Time now T-minus 25 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. Just past the top of the hour here, as SpaceX is a little less than 26 minutes away from its first Falcon 9 launch of 2025. Maybe the first launch of the year, far from the first launch for this first stage booster, though. Tail number 1073 in the SpaceX fleet. If you weren't here when I mentioned it before, this will be flight number 20 for this booster. And it still would be 4 shy of being the launch leader for SpaceX's fleet. That distinction still belongs to B1067. SpaceX is working to increase its reusability for its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights. Same with the payload fairings. Talk more about the fairings in just a little bit, but for now, let's go ahead and take a trip down memory lane with the booster history here before we get the big event and the start of preparation for second stage LOX load. First flight for B1073 was a Starlink mission. 53 version 1.5 Starlink satellites launching on the Group 4-15 mission back on May 14th. That was followed up by a launch for one of SpaceX's longest-standing customers, Luxembourg-based communications company SES, sending up SES satellite number 22. A couple more Starlinks after that. 4-26 on August 10th, 4-35 on September 24th of 2022. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Hakuto R's second mission to the moon. Its first happened to launch aboard this booster as a solo venture back on December 11th. This followed up by the launch Amazonas Nexus on behalf of Hispasat on February 7th. Mission to the International Space Station was up next. The Commercial Resupply Services 27, or CRS-27 mission, lifting off on the Ides of March 2023. Run of Starlinks here for a while for this booster. Starlink 6-2 on April 19th, 5-11 on June 12th, 6-12 on September 4th, 6-27 on November 8th, 6-37 on January 15th, and 6-41 on March 4th. First mid-inclination rideshare mission for SpaceX was up next for this booster, lifting off on April 7th of last year, Bandwagon 1, carrying 11 satellites. Back to Starlink land we go, then Starlink 6-58 on May 13th, 8-9 on July 3rd, 10-7 on August 12th, 6-61 on October 23rd. And then finally for this booster, a mission for the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, sending up their GSAT-20 communications satellite back on November 18th. That, of course, brings us to today. We're in 22 minutes and 22 seconds. We'll see launch number 20 for B-1073. Time now, T-minus 21 minutes, 1 second and counting. Now less than 10 seconds from now, the feed line conditioning will begin. We'll see that manifest with the so-called big vent coming up at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. A little bit hard to see because the wind apparently is blowing the vent directly at the crew access tower there, but you can see now some of the vapor wrapping around crew and cargo access tower there at pad 40. See it better here from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs camera perspective, looking they're south of the rocket essentially. Looking up north at it. This venting will continue on until about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds as the feed lines are being chilled prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. So far, all is progressing on time with this first launch of the year for SpaceX. A good omen to start off 2025. As like I said, it's got a busy month ahead. Not only with Falcon missions, but of course, Flight 7 of Starship coming up here in the very near future, potentially as soon as a week from today, though SpaceX has not formally announced that as a official target launch date. There are notices out that are suggesting a launch on the 10th is in the plans right now. Currently down at Starbase, The Super Heavy booster is at the orbital launch mount by the launch and catch tower there, nicknamed Mechazilla, of course. This will be the first time that SpaceX launches a Block 2 Starship rocket, the upper stage. Take a live look now at Starbase from our friends Lab Padre. Some lights coming and going. One of the nice things about Starbase as it currently exists is that it lies along a public beach access road. So you can get some great views just by taking a drive on over from Brownsville. And depending on when you make a trip down there, you too could see a nearly 400-foot tall rocket at a pretty close proximity. Now T-minus 17 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. Less than a minute left on the big vent here. Time now T-minus 16 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. See the big vent has wrapped up. Second stage lock slowed, now just 10 seconds from getting underway. I want to thank a couple folks in the live chat for your support tonight. Our thanks to Monkey Tree Rob. Good to see you back this evening for $2 super chat. And Goku, marking 2 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level. Appreciate that, Goku. Glad to have you on our side, and appreciate you being a member ongoing with us. It says, thanks for all the live feeds. Very welcome. Thanks for your support of what we do here at Spaceflight now. Monkey Tree Rob back again with a $10 super chat this time. Thank you, Monkey Tree, who says, rockets are life as we know it. Will Robinson, thank you for all you do. Thank you so much, Rob, for the kind words. I will very much extend that out to all the team here at Spaceflight now, since this is exceedingly far from a solo venture. Taking a look from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs, C&J Images. It's just one of our friends behind the camera. Obviously, our Adam Bernstein is behind the tracking cameras here at the press site. Another photographer, Michael Kane, getting ready to track the rocket from the north side of things. Looking forward to sharing his images with you after liftoff. Also want to thank the Rocket Girl for being a member with us for 5 months at the Mission Specialist level. Really appreciate that. She says, happy to be here again. It's time beginning a brand new year, a brand new spaceflight era. I hope all of you will have a wonderful year full of launches. Go Falcon 9. Go Spaceflight now. Very kind sentiment. Last little mention from the live chat here. One of our moderators, Astro Joe, has been with us for 30 months. My goodness, Astro Joe, appreciate you sticking with us all this time and all you do as a moderator. Really appreciate that. Now T-minus 13 minutes, 50 seconds and counting as we're awaiting pad level views from SpaceX, which should be coming up here in the next few minutes or so. Let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be launching when it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? As we mentioned near the top of the broadcast, SpaceX is launching the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite to a geosynchronous transfer orbit. We've seen a number of those in the recent weeks, so you'll probably be familiar with the trajectory here, but for those who may have missed those launches, essentially we'll be heading out due east when it leaves the pad. Falcon 9 first stage booster B-1073 is going to follow the arc of that red line there and aim for a touchdown on SpaceX's drone ship called a Shortfall of Gravitas. If successful, this will mark the 92nd booster landing for that particular drone ship and the 391st booster landing for SpaceX to date. As we mentioned, with the payload fairings that are flying on board the Falcon 9 rocket, one is number 181, the other is number 200. SpaceX will once again endeavor to recover those payload fairings, turn them around for future flights. They splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of parachutes. SpaceX said in a presentation back at the beginning of last year now that they save about $6 million per recovery effort, so it's an ongoing and important part of their business model to recover and reuse these as much as possible. They'll be brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels and then brought back into Port Canaveral and to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where they will be refurbished, prepared for their next venture. Time now, T-minus 9 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. So you can see we're getting our first pad-level views of the Falcon 9 rocket. Space 42 is the customer, hence the logo that is temporarily emblazoned on the middle of the Falcon 9 rocket there. SpaceX commentator notes that things are still tracking well. The vehicle remains healthy. As just a quick bit of note here, you'll see that the countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen is a little bit different than what you're seeing from the SpaceX feed in the big box here. Reason for that is our clocks are in real time, and what you're seeing from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our callouts on mission milestones in real time until we're relying exclusively on onboard camera views. As a point of note, SpaceX commentator notes that one of the fairing halves flying today, flying for a 19th time, the other for a 16th time. Fairing halves are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. In a second, we should see a live picture of the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. Actually, I have a nice view of the crescent moon there just above the crew access tower there from this camera perspective. Really nice framing here. There's a live picture of a Shortfall of Gravitas there, staged in the Atlantic. Time now T-minus 7 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Coming up on the engine chill down sequence here in just a moment. Timeout is T-minus 6 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. I want to show you a brief animation from Space 42 of the satellite that's going to be launching here in the next 6.5 minutes. It's an animation of the deployment sequence here. According to Thuraya's acting associate vice president, with the solar panels fully extended, it has a width of 43 meters, the length of about half of a football field. It has 5 electrical thrusters. There's the mission patch from Space 42. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. Here in the next 30 seconds or so, the strong back retract sequence will begin. Start with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector of the strong back will recline about a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. Time now T-minus 4 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. In just a few seconds here, you'll see the clamp arms open up. Call for the strong back retract. There you go, the clamp arms now in motion. Less than 4 minutes remaining. Want to thank the now more than 26,000 of you who are joining with us live for this first Falcon launch of the year, first orbital launch around the globe for the year. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we continue on with these final minutes of the count. Do want to thank a few folks for your support this evening. Thanks to Corey Parsons for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Corey. Who says, awesome work y'all do. This is my go-to channel. Well, thank you. That's very kind. You see the strong back leaning away from the Falcon 9 rocket in the up-close camera perspective from SpaceX. Felix JV191 with a $2 super chat, wishing Godspeed to the mission. Thank you, Felix. He okay? Great handle. With a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, He okay, as we are now less than 3 minutes away from liftoff. At this point, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Great.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Good call from SpaceX. Stage 1 LOX load. Now less than 30 seconds away from the same being true on the second stage in real time. May take slightly longer for that, for us to hear the call from SpaceX. Just again because of the difference in real time versus what's coming in from the stream. Now less than 2 minutes till liftoff. To hear the call for stage 2 LOX load complete. At this point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The additional venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
Good call from SpaceX. As now we're just about a minute away from the first launch of the year. We're going to go ahead and keep our eyes focused on the rocket. We'll come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff. "52 seconds and counting.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch, and we'll be good to go for the first orbital flight of 2025.
LD go for launch.
And with that, we are now less than 30 seconds away from SpaceX's first Falcon 9 of the year. T-minus 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the first orbital flight of 2025. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Now a little more than a minute into flight. Falcon 9 will be throttling down as it approaches max Q at the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Passing through max Q now. Coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff for MECO. Comes up at about T plus 2 minutes and 27 seconds. That will be followed seconds later by stage separation. and the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine for SES-1, and the payload fairings will be separated a little bit after the 3-minute mark.
You can track
Impact
our
chill
progress to
started.
orbit.
Good call for engine chill as they're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Coming up on Miko here. Got Miko. Stage separation. And SES-1. Second stage engine start.
Stage separation confirmed.
Impact ignition.
Good calls from SpaceX. Still getting great tracking views from our team on the ground here. See the hypersonic grid fins extending on the Falcon 9's booster. There go the payload fairings in our big box. Should see the same on the SpaceX cams in just a moment. And our first views of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite there. Call out that both the first and second stages continuing to follow nominal flight paths right now. A good start to the year for SpaceX and its customer, Space 42. Now approaching 5 minutes into flight here. The next milestone coming up will be the first stage entry burn, when 3 of the Merlin engines on the Falcon 9's first stage booster will reignite. Burn lasting about 26 seconds in duration. Given that it's such a clear night, there's a decent chance that we may be able to show you views of that entry burn. That being said, there could be a few pesky clouds that we're just not seeing between us and the booster, given how dark it is, but we will do our level best to bring you views of the entry burn if our tracking cameras here on the ground are able to capture that view for you. Now 5.5 minutes into flight. Now 6 minutes into the mission in real time. The entry burn set to start now in just less than 20 seconds. Again, we will attempt to get our tracking camera on this if we can. Should be clear enough to see it. But this part of tracking can be tricky, so no hard guarantees, but we'll do what we can. Entry burn should be now underway. And we've got that entry burn. Well done, Pete. Call for the start of entry burn from SpaceX and its onboard cameras. Entry burn in real time should be wrapping up here in just a second. There it goes. So you can see the telemetry data from the Falcon 9 first stage booster, bottom left-hand corner of your screen now. Speed continuing to plummet as the entry burn is now concluding from the SpaceX onboard camera perspective. Booster now below 40 kilometers in altitude and making its way down towards the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. Once again, if successful, this will mark the 92nd booster landing for this particular drone ship. This will also be the 311th drone ship landing for a booster, if successful. The dot in the box on the left-hand side of your screen, still a view of the upper stage engine that you're seeing right now on the on-camera views from SpaceX. And there's a view from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Tricky to track it when the dot is that far and faint, now 8 minutes into flight. First stage booster now traveling below the speed of sound. Second stage flight termination system has now been safed. No longer needed at this stage in flight. Coming upon the first stage landing burn here in less than about 5 seconds. Call for Seco. The Merlin vacuum engine will power off as one of the Merlins on the booster is now powered on. Let's listen in for the landing.
Second engine cutoff 1. And we are currently in landing burn. And waiting for Falcon 9 to land on the drone ship.
Landing leg deployed. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a 20th time, B-1073 is now down on the drone ship.
And we did have confirmation of nominal orbital insertion. The second stage is now embarking on its coast phase. After the coast phase, we will relight that MVAC engine around the T plus 28-minute mark, and that will be followed by payload deploy around the T plus 35-minute mark. Before we take a short break for the coast, we have a message from our customer, Space42. After that, we'll see you back here in about 17 minutes.
Since the Thuraya 4 mission was announced in 2020, Space42 team have worked tirelessly to provide our customers.
Unfortunately, because this statement from Space42 does have a little bit of music playing underneath it, we're going to have to cut away from it, since otherwise we risk being demonetized with this broadcast. Now a little more than 10 minutes into this mission so far. Let's go ahead and talk about what's coming up next for this mission here. As you heard, a little more than 28 minutes post liftoff, the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will reignite for a burn lasting about 56 seconds in total. That will adjust the upper stage and set it on the right trajectory before it deploys the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite at about T plus 35 minutes and 28 seconds. as we're awaiting views to come back of the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a tour around our solar system, look at another celestial body, the big gas giant Jupiter there. This view coming from our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions. Of course, Jupiter is a busy target right now as a number of missions are heading that way. JUICE from the European Space Agency and NASA's own Europa Clipper, both broadly speaking Jupiter bound. If Pete, if you can hear me, if you can adjust the brightness so we can see the moons there, go ahead and talk about those. Little bit hard to make out, but you can see just beneath or down and to the left of, thanks Pete, of Jupiter. The closest moon there is Io. Bottom left-hand corner of the big box here, that is Ganymede. Callisto's off the frame, well to the bottom left of where we're seeing Jupiter here, but trucking a little bit north, you see the dot there near the top of your screen. That is the target of NASA's Europa Clipper mission, its namesake, the moon of Europa, believed to have an exciting ocean underneath the crust of ice on that moon. Looking to learn a lot about that particular body in the 2030s once the Europa Clipper spacecraft arrives. Taking a look at the telemetry here of the Falcon 9's second stage as it's cruising over the Atlantic Ocean right now, making its way towards the west coast of the African continent. While we're looking towards the next milestones of the mission, do want to thank a few folks for your support for our live coverage tonight. Want to thank Old Sea Dog for a £2 super chat. Appreciate that. Says, thanks for all you do. Appreciate your support of what we do. Kai with a $10 super chat saying, still working on getting hired by SpaceX. Love this company and this channel so much. Thank you for the kind words, Kai, and for the support. Mike Zedek with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Mike. Matthew Natal with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Matthew, for your support at that level. Quoting one of my favorite movies, Willy Wonka here with We Are the Music Makers and the Dreamer of Dreams. Jersey Jen with a $2 super chat saying, love to Spaceflight now for all the hard work. Thank you, Jen. Roman Seminole with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Roman. One of our channel members, Licia, with a $5 super chat saying, in honor of my son, Frankie. Thank you, Licia. Keep a thought for your son there. Backcountry with a $2 super chat saying, God bless SpaceX in the United States of America. Beverly Knuckles, one of our channel members, with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Beverly, for supporting at that level. Says, fantastic views tonight. Happy New Year from the British Virgin Islands. Moderator, channel member, Callistia Lee, gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Callistia. To our Tenos channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you all with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership well into this new year and beyond. Patty Gichio with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Patty, who says, Happy New Year, everyone. Awesome launch. Andy Mann with the $5 super chat saying, awesome coverage as usual. Appreciate that, Andy. Thank you for your support of the coverage. And Perezivin69 with a $2 super chat as well. Thank you, Perez. Time now T plus 18 minutes, 17 seconds and counting. See the strong back is now coming up right there at pad 40. Part of SpaceX's process of turning around the pad as quickly as possible in between launches. The satellite, which is now on its way to GEO, was delivered by Airbus via its Beluga plane back in the November time frame, has been getting prepared for its launch tonight ever since then. Before it merged with another company and became Space 42, Yahsat selected SpaceX to launch this mission back in September of 2021. Back then, they were targeting a launch in the second half of 2023 and operational service to begin in 2024. Obviously, plans changed and that mission launch got delayed for various reasons, more likely with the readiness of the satellite. Speaking of the satellite, let's go ahead and bring in that animation of the satellite once again, give you an idea of once it is deployed from the Falcon 9 rocket, a sense of what it'll look like when it begins to shift into its on-orbit configuration. With its solar panels extended, it does have a length of about 43 meters, or roughly 141 feet. As I mentioned, it does have 5 electrical thrusters. That big circular L-band reflector that you see there measures about 12 meters in diameter when deployed. We can go ahead and restart the animation here. You can see that deployed once again. Again, this satellite will be one of a series that Space 42 has in geostationary orbit once it is deployed. And it will offer service to the regions of Europe, the Middle East, as well as Africa and Central Asia. Here's that mission patch once again from Space 42. Time now currently T plus 21 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. We're just a little more than 6 minutes away from the reignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon 9's second stage. That burn will last a little less than a minute, helping to put the upper stage in the correct trajectory ahead of the release of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite at T plus 35 minutes, 28 seconds. So about 13 minutes away from satellite deployment. now T plus 24 minutes, 41 seconds and counting, are getting some views back of the Falcon 9 upper stage, continuing on in its coast phase. We're just a little more than 3 minutes away from the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. A little bit of venting you're seeing there, a sign that thermal conditioning is starting to get underway. As we await the second burn of the Falcon 9 rocket's upper stage, I want to thank a few more folks for your support tonight. Our thanks to Mitchell Perkins for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mitchell. Susan Hahn with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Susan, for supporting us at that level. Alexander Cruz with a $2 super chat saying awesome launch and broadcast. Happy New Year. Kimberly with a $5 super chat saying greatest coverage and moderator on the planet. Thank you. Well, that's, I think, overly kind, but appreciate the words regardless, Kimberly. And a big thank you to Mystery McGee for a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you, Mystery. Really appreciate your support at that level. Who says, love SpaceX and Spaceflight now. And Caitlin and I wish we could watch this launch together. Sweet sentiments all the way around. And thank you again for a very generous super chat. Now T plus 26 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. So we're approaching the ignition of that second stage engine here at about T plus 28 minutes and 6 seconds. The time you're wanting to pay attention to at this point, though, as far as views from the upper stage, is coming in the big box in the center of the screen. A little bit of frost flying away. Now less than 50 seconds based off of the on-camera views before the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine.
So let's wait for those callouts.
Evac ignition.
Good call out from SpaceX. SpaceX has been controlling this mission in part from their headquarters in Hawthorne, California, as well as from Hangar X here at the Kennedy Space Center. Upper stage now more than 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface and still speeding up as this burn continues on, set to wrap up in about 10 seconds. Let's listen for the call out.
The second stage.
Evac shutdown.
And with the conclusion of that second burn, deployment of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite is imminent. Good call that they're on the right trajectory for deployment, which will happen about T plus 35 minutes and 28 seconds. So very close to a successful conclusion for SpaceX on its first outing of the year. Of course, then the customer Space 42 really takes over there and move towards signal acquisition on the satellite you see right there on your screen. A good onboard camera view of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite built by Airbus. You can see there near the bottom of the screen one half of the solar array that's currently folded up, and obviously the launch configuration. One of the first orders of business after deployment from the Falcon 9 upper stage, of course, will be to extend those solar arrays once signal is acquired and begin powering up the batteries on board the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite. Now getting some sun on the Falcon 9 upper stage. You saw it cresting over the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite there a second ago. Hopefully it will illuminate deployment but not entirely wash out, although that view does not give me great hope. But we'll wait and see. Now T plus 34 minutes, 17 or 20 seconds now on the SpaceX feed. We are just about a minute away at this point from the deployment of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite. Given the position of the sun, hopefully we'll still be able to see the deployments decently well.
Payload separation confirmed.
And we heard the call out, and there you can see we have a beautiful view of successful deployment of the Thuraya 4 next generation satellite. And that wraps up our coverage for today. Thank you for joining us for Falcon's 429th successful mission overall and our first launch of 2020.
And as you saw and heard, a good deployment of the Thuraya 4 NGS satellite, now on its way to operations in geospace. We're going to go ahead and turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand, now that we have a good liftoff, a good landing, and a successful deployment of SpaceX's first payload of the year. Appreciate all of you who have stayed with us throughout the process of this first orbital launch of the year. Many, many more still yet to come. With this first launch, here are our first round of mission stats as they currently stand. This marked the 418th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the first Falcon 9 launch of 2025. This was the 362nd Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. Being that SpaceX, of course, hasn't launched a Falcon Heavy rocket yet, this will also be the first orbital launch of the year for the company. This is their 133rd orbital launch within the last 365 days. This marked the 225th orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 40 and the 279th orbital launch overall from that pad. A new year means a new column in the bar chart, and they got to start somewhere. Launch number 1 now in the books, looking to eclipse and far surpass the total managed in all of 2024. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 92nd booster landing on actually the drone ship Shortfall of Gravitas, pardon the typo. This was the 311th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 391st SpaceX booster landing. Finally, with some industry stats, this is going to be fairly repetitive here, but bear with us as we do these for all the launches, including the first. This was the first orbital launch from Florida, the first from U.S. soil, the first launch from a U.S. rocket company, and the first launch attempt around the world. Unfortunately, the launch failure count stands at 0. And given that the first launch came from the United States, the entire pie is blue for the U.S. for now. Of course, this will change quite dramatically as the days and months go on. We'll see where we end 2025. And with that, take one last look at the live chat. I believe we are going to go ahead and wrap up our live launch coverage for this first orbital launch coverage of the year. This very young year so far. Lots more to cover, and we hope you stick around with us here at Spaceflight Now for all the launch goodness. Of course, we've got the big launches coming up here just around the corner. The debut of Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. The recovery vessel has departed Port Canaveral in support of that. Starship Flight 7 looking to make some waves with its 7th outing, first Block 2 Starship upper stage, as well as the first payload flying on board a Starship rocket. Some Starlink simulators, stand-ins for the version 3 version of Starlink that an operational version of Starship will fly in the future. Got those coming up, got a moonbound mission lifting off on a Falcon 9, all set to happen within the month of January, so we hope you subscribe to Spaceflight Now and join us back here with our live launch coverage of all those missions and many more. I want to thank our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, as well as P. Carsons with Max Q Productions for their support in tracking this Falcon 9 rocket. I want to thank our moderators in the live chat, Clisty Lee, Aussie Space Girl, Mark Otto, and Astro Joe, for hanging out with us in the live chat, helping to keep the conversation flowing. I want to thank our photographers, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane, for their launch photography. Look for their photos on their handles on X, formerly known as Twitter. Once again, you can find the fellas at MD Kane Jr. for Michael, A. Burn NYC for Adam. You can find us at Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now, as well as on Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky. Our thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of this broadcast, even though he was a little under the weather. Been a trooper working in the background for us tonight. Most importantly, though, want to thank you for wherever you are watching this first launch of the year from. Appreciate you spending your time with us. We look forward to welcoming you back through the digital doors once again very, very soon. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. And we will see you next time, folks. And until then, Happy New Year. Bye-bye.